He sent flowers to the wrong woman. The problem is, the person who got them was his fiancée. This one's from a guy, 27. He says, I work as a florist, and for the past 2 years, I've been in a relationship that not many people knew about because we both decided to keep it quiet for work reasons. She used to be my manager at another company before I left to start my own business. 3 weeks ago, I proposed. She said yes, and we started planning the wedding. At the same time, I had a regular customer at my flower shop, a woman who ordered flowers every week for her mom at a nursing home. We just had friendly work chats, nothing personal. On the day I was sending my fiancé flowers for our anniversary, I mixed up the orders in the system and sent her bouquet with the card to that regular customer's address instead. And the customer's plain bouquet with no card went to my fiancé. The card had very personal words, including details about our relationship that we'd been keeping secret from her parents. The customer, getting a bouquet with somebody else's note, got worried and called to check if it was a mistake. My fiancé, getting a bouquet with no card, was just hurt that I forgot to write anything personal on such an important day and sent me an upset message. I only realized what happened when the customer read the note back to me over the phone. Now I have to explain to my fiancé why a note with private details about our secret relationship ended up with a stranger while she got an empty bouquet. The worst part is that the customer now knows a secret we'd been hiding from her parents, even though she's a total outsider to all of this. Okay, this is one of those cases where nothing bad actually happened, but the awkwardness is off the charts. There's not even any wrongdoing here relationship-wise. It's a mix-up, not cheating, not a lie. So the first thing I do is just explain to my fiancé quickly and honestly what happened. Show her the messages with the customer so she can see there was nothing romantic going on, just crossed orders. As for the customer, yeah, it's not great that a stranger learned personal details, but she'll probably forget about it within a week. She's got her own life, no one to really bring it up with. I just apologize to her for the mix-up and ask that it stay between you two. Honestly, stories like this usually turn into a funny anecdote in a relationship later, as long as you handle it openly right away instead of letting it drag on. Next letter. This one's from a girl, 20. She says, I'm in my second year and I live in a dorm with a roommate I'd been close with all through freshman year. This semester, I started noticing my card balance dropping faster than it should, even though I track my spending in an app. Turns out my roommate knew my card password because I'd once sent her money through a transfer and said the details out loud in front of her. I found a receipt at home for purchases I definitely didn't make. New sneakers, a food delivery for an amount I never spend in one go. I decided to go through my bank history carefully and found a list of transactions over the last 2 months totaling almost $50,000 that I never made. All of them happened on days I was in class while she stayed in the room alone. I didn't jump straight to accusing her. I just asked directly if she knew anything about these charges. At first, she denied everything, but then she started crying and admitted she had debts to other people and decided to take money from me, planning to pay it back gradually. But she couldn't keep up because her paycheck went to other things. I don't know if I should go to the police or just demand the money back and move to different rooms. On one hand, it's a pretty large sum. On the other, I did consider her a friend for almost 2 years. All right, this is a pretty harsh situation because $50,000 isn't a small grievance. It's a serious amount stolen by someone you trusted. Honestly, the friendship here has already taken enough damage that the question isn't whether to forgive her, it's how to get your money back and protect yourself going forward. I wouldn't rush straight to the police, but I also wouldn't just let it slide quietly. Draw up a written repayment agreement with specific dates and amounts and have her sign it. If she starts dodging payments, that's when it makes sense to escalate, because you'll have a document proving she admitted the debt, and you should definitely move out, because living with someone who knows your card password and has already used it without asking is a risk not worth carrying just because of an old friendship. And here's another story. This one's from a man, 38. He says, my daughter is in high school, and for the past 6 months, I noticed she'd become more withdrawn, rarely left her room, barely ate with us at the table. My wife and I figured it was just typical teenage stuff, until one day I happened to see notes on her phone where she was meticulously tracking calories for every single item of food and harshly criticizing herself for any amount over some limit she'd set. I talked to my wife, and we decided to handle it carefully, without making a scene. We booked an appointment with a specialist who works with eating disorders in teenagers. Our daughter refused to go at first, said she was fine, that she was just watching her health. At the first session with the doctor, she stayed quiet for a long time, but eventually admitted she's afraid of gaining weight because a girl at school wants me to comment about her figure, and she hasn't been able to stop thinking about it since. The doctor said the situation is serious, but still at an early stage, and that reaching out early is a good sign for recovery. Right now, we go to family therapy once a week. Our daughter is slowly starting to eat more normally, though setbacks still happen. I just want to tell other parents reading this, if something in your kid's behavior feels off, better to check and be wrong than to miss the moment when help would have been easier. You know, I don't say this often, but this letter is a pretty good example of what a parent's response should look like in this kind of situation. You didn't look away, you didn't turn it into a shouting match, you went straight to a specialist. And I think that saved your daughter a lot of time and pain compared to waiting it out. Eating disorders aren't about willpower. And they're not just someone deciding to lose weight. There's anxiety tangled up in there, how someone sees themselves, and often some offhand comment that gets stuck in their head permanently, like what happened with your daughter. It's good that you brought in family therapy, because recovery in situations like this tends to go smoother when there's a support system around, not just one appointment a week with a specialist. Setbacks are a normal part of the process, not a sign that something's fundamentally going wrong. Keep doing what you're doing, and take care of yourselves too, because parents in this situation need support as well. Moving on. Next story is completely different. This one's from a woman. 23. She says, I work at a small company, just 7 of us on the team, and we're all pretty close. Eat lunch together often, know a lot about each other's lives. 3 months ago, a new coworker joined, really easy to talk to, and a friendship started building between us. Then something that felt like mutual interest. The problem is, a month after he joined, I found out from a mutual acquaintance that he's still legally married, even though he'd told me he was in the middle of a divorce that had been dragging on for almost a year, and he was just waiting on paperwork. I decided to check through public records and found out the divorce documents haven't even been filed, meaning formally he hadn't started the process at all. I asked him directly, and he admitted he lied because he was afraid I wouldn't even talk to him if I found out he was still married. Even though he insists things with his wife ended a long time ago in practice, they just can't afford to separate and finalize the divorce yet for financial reasons. I don't know whether to believe this explanation or treat it as just another attempt to manipulate me, because the first lie was already pretty significant and lasted a whole month. Listen, the key thing here isn't whether what he's saying now about the financial reasons is true. It's that he already showed you he was willing to lie for a month to keep your interest. That's important information about how this person behaves when he feels the truth might get in his way. Even if everything he's saying now turns out to be completely true, it doesn't change the fact that his first move was to lie instead of being honest. Relationships that start with deception are really hard to rebuild trust in afterward, because every time something doesn't quite add up, that first lie is going to come back to mind. In your position, I'd either give it a long pause to see if he actually starts the divorce for real, on paper, not just in words, or just step back now, because the risk of hitting the same wall twice is pretty high. Here's one more letter, and I think it'll make a good way to close out today's video. This one's from a woman, 52. She says, I have a son. He's 25, and for the past 3 years, our relationship has been pretty strained because he dropped out of university in his final year to pursue music, something he dreamed about since childhood. I fought with him a lot back then, told him he was throwing his life away on empty fantasies, that he needed to finish his degree for the sake of stability. He didn't listen to me, and we barely spoke after that, aside from short calls on holidays. This whole time, I believed I was right, that he was making a mistake, and I kept waiting for him to come to his senses and go back to school. 2 weeks ago, he called and told me his music had landed a deal with a fairly well-known label, and that his first release comes out in a month. I was happy, of course, but at the same time, I felt a pang of guilt. For all those years, I told him he was making a mistake instead of supporting his dream. Now, I want to actually rebuild our relationship, but I don't know how to start the conversation without it sounding like I'm just trying to get close to him now that he's achieved something notable. Well, this is a pretty honest and human letter because a lot of parents in this situation would just shut down and never admit they were wrong. But you're owning it directly, and that's already half the battle. I wouldn't wait for some perfect moment to have this conversation. Just call him and say exactly what you wrote here, that you're proud of what he's accomplished and that you regret not supporting him back when it mattered most to him. Don't over-explain. Don't spend a long time justifying why you reacted the way you did back then, because that'll come across as defending yourself rather than a genuine admission. Kids, even grown ones, usually really appreciate it when a parent just says, "I was wrong," without trying to soften it with explanations. This isn't about the success, and it's not about him being validated now. It's about you being willing to own your mistake. And that's a conversation worth having regardless of any record deal. That's all for today. Thanks for reading and sending in your stories. Keep sharing them. See you in the next video.